KTT G20 Indonesia tak hanya menghadirkan para pemimpin negara, pemimpin kawasan, dan lembaga internasional yang membuahkan kesepakatan kerjasama. Namun di antara pertemuan G20 juga dipamerkan mahakarya dari para seniman negara anggota. Constellations Global Reflection atau CGR merupakan pameran seni publik luar ruang yang unik dan menampilkan mahakarya seniman kontemporer. Pameran ini digelar di Pulau Kura-kura, Bali mulai November 2022 sampai dengan November 2023. CGR menjadi acara sampingan resmi G20 dan dibuka untuk umum. Pameran ini adalah kesempatan baik bagi para seniman untuk mengekspresikan masalah sosial yang mendesak. Para seniman sepakat, instalasi yang mereka buat harus fokus pada isu-isu perubahan iklim, kesetaraan, dan kerjasama global.
I think this is a very significant moment, and I would like to use art because art is beyond boundaries of nationalities. Art actually can touch the souls, and these are the expressions of artists from G20 countries about sustainable development goals, about issues of inequity, issues of conflicts, issues of climate, issues of oceans. And I think this is a moment where we can all come together.
Dibuat di Bali, 20 karya seni dicetak secara digital, berbahan plastik daur ulang, dan diintegrasikan ke dalam lentera berputar bertenaga surya. Menyala pada malam hari, karya-karya seni ini berperan sebagai mercusuar yang memanggil setiap insan dari seluruh penjuru dunia untuk menciptakan kedamaian.
KTT G20 bukan saja merupakan ajang pertemuan para pemimpin negara-negara besar dan tempat di mana mereka melakukan dialog dan berkolaborasi, tapi juga bisa menjadi tempat di mana para seniman memamerkan mahakarya mereka. Nah, di sela-sela acara G20 di Pulau Kura-kura, Bali, ada pameran berjudul Constellations Global Reflections yang memamerkan karya-karya dari 20 seniman internasional, termasuk diantaranya seniman dari Indonesia. Nah, apa saja kira-kira pesan yang ingin disampaikan oleh pameran ini dan bagaimana mengenai karya itu sendiri? Apa-apa saja yang menarik? Tentu saja ini merupakan salah satu tempat yang bisa kita kunjungi nanti. Nah, Insight with Desi Anwar kali ini telah berada di Pulau Kura-kura, Bali, dan saya sudah ditemani oleh kurator dari pameran Constellations Global Reflections, Lance Fung. Hi, Lance.
Hello, Desi.
Happy
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Bali.
My pleasure. I love it here.
And it's a great place to have an exhibition. I mean, we're outdoor, we're in Bali, and I mean, the place is beautiful enough without the artwork. But this is also the place of a very, very unique exhibition, Constellations Global Reflections. You're the curator, so just go over with me. What's the story behind it, and what is this exhibition all about?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Desi. This is a huge honor, and I'm super excited to share to your audience what Constellations is about. The exhibition began about a year ago, but in reality it began 15 years ago when I first stepped foot in Bali and Kura-kura, Bali.
It was a very different place in
very
those
different.
days. None of these, growth.
It's
trees.
evolving. It was just a plan on paper, and it was a dream by Sherry Nursalam, and she asked me to come out to give her some ideas off the cuff. And we always wanted to curate a proper museum exhibition in Bali of international standard. So really befitting the audience of what my normal work is, which would be the MoMA, the Guggenheim, Tate Modern, but here in Bali. But we never had the opportunity. So about a year ago, Sherry emailed me and said, would you like to curate a show in tandem with the G20 summit? And so she allowed me complete creative freedom, but only a year's time. So let me tell you, doing a show like this is a 3 to 4 year project, so we had to step on the gas. Meanwhile, there's all the pressure, right? So we wanted to do a show that was relevant, that related to the political business leaders coming, but most importantly, be the voice of the people and talk about issues that are relevant to all of us. They need to hear these voices sometimes.
So there's that brief, the brief of, you know,
the context of who's coming to
well,
town.
this is interesting because normally, I mean, art's about, you know, expression, freedom of expression. How did you put together with it the brief, obviously with very important messages about giving voices to the people, but also dealing with important and current issues like, you know, development goals, like, you know, the planet and everything. So how did you sort of marry the idea and the concept with the artworks themselves?
So, I sound like a mastermind in planning it out, but to be honest, I said I'll try. For a couple weeks I panicked because nothing could meet up to the goals and the standard of what's expected of a show like this. So in fact, just when I was ready to cave and say, it's a great opportunity, Sherry, I have confidence you'll do something wonderful, but I don't have the right project, because it needed to be organic. It needed to be inspired by Bali. It needed to have an international voice, and it needed to have relevance. And I couldn't quite, under pressure, pull it out. And then an epiphany came out. And I started looking at photographs with my mom, who's 90, who's recently moved in, just so we can make sure she's safe and not bored. And she's also very entertaining. But I started showing her the pictures of the earlier trips that Sherry brought me out on. And I started to show the temples. And then these incredible, I remember the first time I landed, she took me straight, jet lagged and all, to an outdoor dining area. And then I saw one of the performances of the young women dancing, which was absolutely mesmerizing. In fact, I'm wearing a shirt I bought 15 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Which happily it still fits.
Yeah, I was about to say, wow, you really keep yourself very
But
very
nonetheless,
fit.
it was all of these memories. And I realized that's what Bali is, right? So great art is not about something beautiful, something valuable, something that rich people buy, or something that intellectuals appreciate. It may be all of those. But at the end of the day, all 20 of my artists delivered an artwork with the message, but creates an experience for the visitor. And I thought, this is perfectly aligned with Bali. Bada bing, bada boom, but what the heck are we going to make? Went back through all of my tourist trip pictures, and I realized two of the things that were most memorable were the Balinese craftspeople, artisans, extremely skilled, generational history of their craft, but wanting to marry that with a contemporary voice, right? So the inspiration came when I was sitting there in a panic, Balinese lanterns and textiles.
Lanterns and textiles.
And then that's how the project began.
We have one example there behind us.
Oh, great, yes. The artwork by our French participant, Ben. So the idea then was two things. Let's allow the artist enough creative birth so that they can find room in this brief, as you said, so that they can make it interesting for them.
Let's just wait while this plane is passing. As you can see, Bali is a focus of international travels, and we will be hearing these planes going back and forth. I mean, it's a good problem, but okay, carry on.
And it's great, because when we flew in, we flew over the island.
Yeah,
and at
so you can
nighttime,
actually see.
people can take photographs and post it on our social of constellations from above.
Okay, continue.
So in any event, so we came up with the concept, and of course the most relevant narratives for Kura-kura Bali is the Trihita Karana, and then also in more contemporary terms, although it's a complete alignment, is the planet, the people, and the spirit.
Well, that's what the Tri Hita Kirana. Tri is three, you know, the Hita Karana is actually, you know, our relationship with the earth, our relationship with each other, and our relationship with the divine. And that's, so you really
embraced
that.
And so then we shared the history and the value of this belief philosophy to the artists coming from 20 different countries. And
how was that? Was there any difficulty and
No.
things get lost in translation?
Not
or
at
do
all.
they
I think when
immediately-
something's good, it's good, right? When something resonates and we're talking about a universal humanitarian kind of connection, it supersedes any kind of language, politics, gender, religion, because we are all human and we all tap into the same thing of empathy. And so the main messages from the 20 different artworks is everything we're also focused on: climate change, sea level rise, ocean plastic pollution, gender equity, respect, peace, a better future for our children. These are not deep intellectual artistic narratives that will be a PhD dissertation, but it should be. It's about something so simple that great artists can make artwork that little children can understand, or the PhD philosopher studying art history can.
Okay.
And so then they had this concept of create an artwork. The other thing that I wanted to do was, since we're doing a project about the future and about disparity in one sense, whether it's national or individual differences, I didn't want to do a project that created a ginormous footprint with a great social message.
Yeah.
A bit hypocritical, wouldn't stick very right, right? So the entire show was curated via remotely.
Okay.
Typically, the artists would need to come on site to be inspired. Typically, I'd have to go to the studio wherever they are around the world. And there's a lot of traveling, a lot of production.
And a lot of carbon footprint.
Oh, huge. It's kind of scary if you really look at these blockbuster art shows. So the entire show was done constantly via our computers with various time zones. And then I also wanted the resources, the actual expenses for the art show to be spent here in Bali. There's nothing more offensive than having a great show made elsewhere and then just drop shipped and say how authentic it is.
So that helps, you know, keep the budget to.
It not only keeps the budget down, but more importantly, it was about giving the local Balinese a sense of ownership and a benefit. So there would be a bit of an economic impact of creating 20 masterpieces. So all the artworks were made in Bali. So the artists created their artworks, had a huge amount of faith in me, and I had to place all my faith in our project manager here, Diana Sterling, and then our main fabricator, Ugi Iskander. They realized the show for all of us. The art exhibition, if people do come, is on 3 different locations on Kura-kura, Bali. 10 artworks on one location, 5 and 5. And they have different kind of feels and themes as you see them.
I just want to remind our viewers, you know, some of those issues that you mentioned about poverty, climate issues, gender issues, and you know, all our social problems. This is part of this, what we call the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN and the whole world we've committed to realizing in 2030. But I think it's the first time that is actually, you know, manifested in the art form. And so there is, I think, a very interesting but relevant at the same time. Now, let me ask you about how did you choose the artists to take part? Obviously, there's so many great artists around the world. And also, what is the uniqueness that you want to convey through this, you know, the lantern and the material?
Sure.
And also you know, obviously the Balinese touch is it's because it reflects Bali. But on the whole, I mean, how did you come up with the choices?
Was the evolution of many things. And your questions are really great, by the way. It's like an art professor, I might add. But nonetheless, since I was inspired by the weaving, the local weaving craft here, I really wanted the artists to make their designs, the weavers to interpret it, weave them into these giant textiles, which would then turn into this rotating lantern, right? However, impossible. The size of what they can weave, the weight, being able to withstand the rain and the wind was inappropriate. So in the end, our team researched and found a material, a textile, that's made primarily from recycled plastics, so we can further that environmental message. And then the benefit was the artwork is exact. so we didn't have anything lost in translation. So it's very interesting, sort of this process. But you asked really about the curatorial project, my main focus. How do you pick 20 artists out of hundreds of thousands of artists around the world? At first I was going to start with emerging artists, knowing it would be a great opportunity for them
the new,
to show.
the young,
And then I realized if we want to catch the attention of some of these VIPs, to actually pay attention to the message, we may need to bring in the most important artists from each of those countries. Someone that they may have already seen in their national museum or on TV, or they might even own the artwork.
And the 20 different countries, or how many?
Yeah.
How many?
So for the G20, which I had to research, there actually are not 20 countries. There are 19 countries
Plus the European
plus the
Union.
EU. I thought I'm not going to step in it and pick an artist from EU because I'll
there's
offend
no-
all the other countries. So rather, I decided to do 2 artists from the host country of Indonesia, which would also allow me to have 1 male artist and 1 female artist. But when you look at each country, it was just copious amount of research for my team back in California, for me to go through. And then as you're saying, it's a bit subjective. Did I wear a black shirt today or a tan, right? You know, it's aesthetic, it's about the voice, it's about the character of the artist. I wanted to create an exhibition that was very varied, so that if you like figurative work, you could see it. If you like something that's more cartoony, you could see that. If you want to see something abstract, you can see that. The show is so diverse. It has half of the artists are female, the half are men, from all walks of life. And so, you know, we have incredible artists, you know, just from Indonesia.
But how did you shortlist? Okay, the Indonesian, we're going to meet one of the Indonesian artists later, but how did you shortlist? And especially, like you said, these are, they're well-known artists. They have to be well-known in order to attract the kind of international attention that this kind of exhibition merits. I mean, you have, like, you know, the long list and then the short list, you know. And
which is all confidential, but list of starting with thousands to hundreds to dozens per country, and basically looking at their historic merit, who's had shows at Guggenheim, MoMA, Whitney, Tate, really who are the blockbuster significant artists that have shifted art history, and then start the outreach and see who was interested, who had the best idea, who could meet a deadline. There's a bit of visionary approach and a bit of practicality that came in. I was nervous. Many countries, some countries excel in installation or sculpture, but not in two-dimensional art. And so not always could I pick an artist that I thought would be great because they were inappropriate, or their messaging, their style, too provocative. This is not meant to be a political show. It's meant to be a global conversation about global politics in one regard.
And finding common grounds. And
finding common ground,
celebrating
absolutely.
peace and love and humanity.
But as they came in, artist by artist,
and were there lots of submissions? Were there lots of artists
I only
interested?
went for each country the A list, should I say, first on the list. And then rarely did I have to go to the second on the list, and I won't say which ones, which was amazing. You know, this was a passion project for me and the artist. This was not as if anyone was compensated as per normal museum standards. So that was already a little risky. It's in Bali. We were producing it. It's for political circus initially.
It's
but
not for sale?
Not for sale.
For public viewing?
And then it opens to the public and the art world. So I thought that might be less attractive. But everyone was excited. There were a few situations where the countries didn't have world famous artists, right? But they had world talented artists. So the beauty was practicality. No superstar Damien Hirst from this particular country, no big deal. It allowed me to say, I want to discover the next superstar in that country. And so in the end, then there's about a 20% contribution of younger artists from different countries who are super, super talented, and artists that the art world will follow. But it was really a bit of a shell game. And super stressful. Not about that, but of like, you know, what aesthetic, there was a shell game on where to place the work. There, by the way, the art exhibition, if people do come, is on 3 different locations on Kura-kura, Bali. 10 artworks on one location, 5 and 5. And they have different kind of feels and themes as you see them. And so that was part of that process.
Share with me some of the artists that you've chosen, and perhaps highlight some of them. We'll have one here in the background. And this also, how do you match the artist with the theme? Obviously, there has to be different themes in accordance with the different problems, the sustainable development problems that we have. How do you match them? Do they come up with their ideas, or do you sort of, steer them in a certain direction?
So I think normally I do a lot of steering, but in the case of this show, it was more of a lot of discussion. Because when we're talking about these huge systemic global issues, you don't want to try to steer anyone, right? And so it just resulted in a gazillion hours of conversations online, talking about local things, what was happening, what was relevant to them after doing research about Bali and the G20 and whatnot. So every artist came up with their concepts. Some multiple ideas, others one. And then from there they would send in a sketch, we would talk about it. Would it pop enough? Could you see it at a distance? What would it look like when it's illuminated at night and rotating versus day? And then they would tweak and what have you. And then eventually they would upload the final file. What was helpful was initially when you're doing a big show like this, super ambitious and not enough time, you reach out to artists you know already.
Okay. Such as who?
Oh, I thought that.
No, I still haven't heard any of the
I'm sorry, I didn't want to single out anyone. But I will tell you.
Okay.
So I first reached out to 2 artists who instantly accepted, and we started working, so they allowed us to create prototypes. And that was Kiki Smith, who is she is an extremely talented artist from New York City.
Okay.
And then Amelia and Ilya Kabakov, who are extremely talented artists that live in Long Island. So right from the beginning, I shot out 2 emails and phone calls. First to Kiki Smith from New York City, and she agreed to participate. And then I reached out to Amelia and Ilya Kabakov.
Okay. In the art world, these are very
super famous.
Okay.
In fact, the only living artist who has a room in the Hermitage is Ilya Kabakov. So in any event, I reached out to them. It was before the conflict, and then all of a sudden things shifted with the conflict. A lot of discomfort
With
all the way
Russia,
around.
probably?
Exactly. And so I spoke with the Kapakovs, and they said, well, we are Ukrainian. Although completely revered in Russia, they were both born in the Ukraine, lived in the Ukraine, and they viewed themselves as Ukrainian because they were embedded through the Soviet
Soviet Union.
Yeah,
yes,
Soviet Union.
Once upon a time, before the whole thing fell apart back in 1990.
Thank you for that. So in any event, those were the 3 artists I reached out to, and that started the conversation. Kiki's work was very much about sea level rise. You can see it's an image of Alice in Wonderland with a bunch of animals swimming through the water. Ultimately, they're swimming and floating through a river of their own tears. And then the Kabakov work is about future utopia, where the planet is clean and perfect and at peace. And you see all of the people literally flying, like those few dreams you have as a teenage kid, right? So all of these people are flying into a better future. And so that kind of started. I very much would like to do an iteration where all of the artworks were by a global competition of children. I would love to see another iteration of artists that were either only Indonesian based or from the region.
You said that you included 2 Indonesian artists, and one of them is Rahmayani. And of course, she is quite well known in the international circuit. She's been around very, she does a lot of installations, very iconoclastic in many ways, some of her past work. And so how did you end up choosing, the Indonesian artist? What considerations, particularly choosing Rahmayani as one of your exhibitors?
And that was a delicate one because I wanted to make, you can't blow it with the local artist, right? And they need to be local and grounded. They need to be talented. They need to have something valuable to say on an international context. And you also want to like them, right? You want to enjoy this process. So I reached out through Sherry. We created an advisory committee of local, of Indonesian art experts, and they gave me a short list.
Okay.
And from that short list, I researched, and it was intuitive and instant of the two artists that I wanted. One was Armani, and the other one is A.D. Piros.
Okay. He's also very well known here in Indonesia.
And what I loved about his is his work is humble, it's painterly, it's calligraphic, and all of his work comes from passages from the Quran. And so it added a completely different element to the show.
Are you happy with the results after so long in terms of its gestational period, and then actually finally putting it together? And then what's going to happen? This is going to be exhibited obviously for a while, for a few months, and then where will the exhibitions go, Lance?
Sure. So the emotions were first fear, relief,
and now
excitement, and now pride. I am absolutely thrilled of the show. I'm so proud of it and proud of the artist. I was just sort of the orchestrator, that I am praying an angel comes our way so that we can actually travel the show and the message. I would love to see it one stop in the US, one in Europe, once in the Middle East, and once in Asia. In a perfect world, it most likely will only be on view here, but it's a dream. I know Bali and I would like to see this initiative continue. Since so much of the funds went into the brick and mortar, so to speak, the armature, the concrete pad, the structure, the mechanism, the solar power that generates the artwork, the actual artwork in itself is the least complicated and least expensive aspect, which is atypical. And so I very much would like to do an iteration where all of the artworks were by a global competition of children.
Okay.
I would love to see another iteration of artists that were either only Indonesian based or from the region. So in other words, we've started a prototype with a blockbuster museum show, and now I hope we can just get a bigger audience.
And it should resonate well into the future, because the issues being talked about, these are, very long-term issues, current, but it also affects our future generation. I mean, I know that the message is important, obviously, and also the timing is very important because Indonesia being presidency of the G20. But at the end of the day, art is all about the visual experience as well. What kind of visual impression you would like people to have?
So I would like people to leave with a sense of discovery, a sense of effulgence, a sense of hope. I'd like their cameras to be loaded up with images for memories or posting, because you see sumptuous images of a created forest in red of what it should be like. You see incredible work by an artist, which is a huge honor for me to work with for the first time, Yinka Shinabare from the UK, of these 4 figures dressed in gorgeous clothing, which the world sees it as South African textile. And each of them are focusing on wind, earth, fire, water, the elements. But this artist is actually commenting on colonialism and how the Dutch and French would come through this area. Well, this textile first was created by the Dutch, mass-produced cheaply and poorly, lifting Indonesian textile design to sell to the Indonesians who said, no, we want handmade quality things that we make. We're not going to buy this commercially printed garbage. And then they thought, well, where do we sell it? They actually found the buyer in South Africa. And now when we see these traditional Indonesian textiles, we see them as South African right? So these are messages that talks about this global community
Interconnectedness.
through textile, right? And so there are a lot of these messages, far
Yeah.
too much to talk about, but hopefully people will see the show or go to the website.
Okay, when is the best time of the day to come and see the show?
My favorite is dusk, sunset. You're able to see it in the daytime. You almost always will see a spectacular light show of a sunset,
Okay.
and then the lanterns come alive with the lighting from within.
And the exhibition will be here until when exactly? When
That's
can
a
the
good
public-
question. I don't know.
When can the public start
Oh,
visiting it? Soon after the G20.
yeah, soon after the G20. And we actually are defining the public access times.
Okay, Lance, thank you so much for your insight. It's been a real great pleasure talking to you. And again, congratulations for putting something like this together and in a relatively short space of time. And I'm sure there'll be a great many interests. And we hope, some of the world leaders would come here and see it.
Pray for
Take a
that.
break from, their busy talking and dialoguing, but just to come and also see the beauty of Bali. Once again, thank you very much for being with us. Tetaplah bersama kami. Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali dengan siapa setelah yang berikut ini.
Padahal kalau kita mau melestarikan alam, kita harus bekerja sama. Karena itu kesadaran tentang alam ini adalah pada dasarnya semua terhubungkan satu dan lainnya.
Kembali bersama Insight with Desi Anwar, kita dari Pulau Kura-kura, Bali, tempat pegelaran pameran ya. Ada 20 karya seniman internasional dalam sebuah pameran yang bernama Constellations Global Reflections. Ini merupakan salah satu side events dari KTT G20 dan ada 2 dari 20 seniman internasional yang ikut memamerkan karyanya di sini. Salah satu adalah Rahmayani, seorang seniman yang sudah tidak asing lagi di Indonesia dan juga sudah terkenal di dunia internasional karena karya-karyanya. Dan Yani, apa kabar?
Baik.
Ya, selamat ya, karyanya menjadi salah satu yang seniman yang dipilih untuk
Terima
bergabung
kasih.
dalam pameran yang sifatnya internasional ini. Nah, memang kalau saya lihat ini kan tujuannya ada berkaitan dengan pesan untuk kemanusiaan, untuk planet, dan juga untuk masalah-masalah yang berkaitan dengan Sustainable Development Goals. Tapi bagaimana, Yani, perasaannya untuk menjadi bagian dari pameran ini, dan mungkin cerita sedikit bagaimana Pak ide yang dimiliki, karena ini kalau kita lihat di sini ini adalah karya yang khusus ya untuk dibuat untuk dipamerkan dalam pameran ini.
Ya, waktu saya mendapat undangan itu dan penjelasan dari kuratornya Lance Fung yang dari Amerika itu, ya saya senang. Karena ketika mendengarkan bahwa topik utama dari pertemuan G20 ini itu ya tentang kemandirian pangan, sustainable economy, terus juga wellness, kesehatan, ya kan?
Dan masalah lingkungan tentu saja.
Tentu saja, kan itu berhubungan dengan itu, dan itu memang wilayah yang saya sudah kerjakan sudah lama. Selain berkesenian, juga menulis, saya juga aktif di pelestarian lingkungan hidup gitu, baik di Indonesia maupun di beberapa negara di luar negeri lah gitu. Ya, jadi saya juga melihat ini secara positif ya. Artinya bukan hanya pamer karya, tetapi juga berarti ada kemungkinan untuk berinteraksi dengan kelompok yang ya memang punya posisi untuk merubah apa yang sekarang terjadi di muka bumi ini atau di dunia ini kan, yang dalam kenyataannya memang apalagi ya untuk khususnya masalah lingkungan hidup sepertinya memang mendesak untuk ditangani, karena kalau tidak kita akan menghadapi kerusakan yang parah. Itu kita sudah bisa lihat bagaimana misalkan banjir, longsor itu terjadi di mana-mana sekarang.
Iya, dan ini adalah dampak dari climate change, itu perubahan iklim,
Betul.
sehingga cuaca ekstrim ini semakin sering terjadi. Nah, ini betul-betul masalah global.
Betul.
Tapi ini saya lihat ada yang menarik, ini adalah kepedulian seniman yang diajak untuk menyuarakan hal-hal ini. Nah, mungkin Yani bisa cerita sedikit dari
Ya.
segi temanya. Ini Yani sendiri yang pilih temanya atau mungkin diarahkan untuk mengambil khusus tema
begini.
lingkungan hidup, dan apa yang ingin diceritakan dengan
Ya, memang
karyanya?
saya waktu di kontak Lance itu saya bilang ya kalau saya sendiri sangat tertarik dengan isu lingkungan hidup karena memang itu sudah saya kerjakan lama ya. Dan saya bisa memperlihatkan beberapa karya yang sudah saya kerjakan yang berhubungan dengan tema tersebut. Lalu silahkan Lance memilih mana kira-kira yang cocok dengan ide dia ya. Nah, ini salah satu karya yang saya buat dengan tema lingkungan hidup itu tahun 2019. Waktu itu di Melbourne ada kebakaran hutan yang luar biasa, mengerikan.
Iya.
Ya kan? Itu sampai nggak tahu berapa ratus ribu orang waktu itu harus ngungsi loh.
Iya.
Nah, jadi saya buat ini, lalu Lance bilang, wah ini kayaknya menarik banget gitu untuk ditampilkan, dan dia jelaskan nanti akan dibuat seperti instalasi. Oke, saya bilang boleh. Yang penting sih untuk saya ya karya ditampilkan, publik mengerti apa sih yang ingin saya ungkapkan lewat karya itu kan. Begitu juga untuk Lance gitu. Nah, jadi dalam hal ini ya masalah lingkungan hidup, tapi juga saya ingatkan Lance bahwa apa yang saya kerjakan selama ini itu dihubungkan juga dengan kearifan lokal. Karena,
apalagi ini juga di Bali kan.
Apalagi ini di Bali, karena sejauh yang saya pahami kearifan lokal, umpamanya dari leluhur kita ini, itu memang menghargai, menghormati alam.
Ya, mereka bekerja sama dengan
Betul,
alam,
melihat
bagian
diri
dari
kita
alam.
menjadi bagian dari alam, bukan penguasa alam.
Iya.
Ya kan?
Makanya ada filosofi yang Trihita Karana itu,
Nah.
di mana kita memang memiliki keharmonisan dengan 3 aspek gitu, dengan alam, dengan lingkungan, dengan
Betul.
sesama manusia, dengan sang pencipta. Nah, ini yang harus
Betul.
ditekankan juga kan ya.
Nah, itu saya juga ya ini kalau pendekatan saya walaupun bicara lingkungan hidup, tapi dihubungkan dengan pengetahuan masa lalu atau yang disebut kearifan lokal itu. Karena memang sih dalam proses modernisasi ini juga banyak orang seperti tidak menganggap penting lagi atau lupa karena lebih sibuk dengan urusan yang
Iya, material biasanya.
material dan bersifat individual kan. Padahal kalau kita mau melestarikan alam, kita harus bekerja sama. Karena itu kesadaran tentang alam ini adalah pada dasarnya semua terhubungkan satu dan lainnya. Kita bukan berbeda sendiri gitu kan, enggak sebetulnya. Nah, ini saya ingin ini
mengangkat
diangkat
ya kearifan lokal ini.
Mhm.
Tapi Yani, ini kan kalau isu-isu yang kita sebut tadi ya, isu lingkungan hidup, isu sosial, bahkan ya isu sekarang juga energi dan ekonomi. Ini kan isu-isu yang para politikus lah dan pemimpin dunia sekarang mereka fokus ke arah itu. Tapi sejauh mana menurut Yani ya, apalagi dengan pengalaman yang begitu lama dan berkecimpung di hal-hal karya seni, tapi juga dengan memiliki pesan, seberapa efektif sih suara seniman untuk ya menyuarakan hal-hal ini?
Betul. Sebetulnya ini bisa sangat efektif dan menarik karena media seni itu bisa mempertemukan disiplin ilmu lainnya. Ya, ini memang mungkin hal baru untuk banyak praktek ya. Tapi sebetulnya media seni yang begitu sangat terbuka karena itu wilayah kreatif, ini bisa mempertemukan sains, filsafat ya. Lalu tadi kearifan lokal gitu. Itu mungkin. Semuanya mungkin. Jadi ini sebetulnya media luar biasa yang kita bisa manfaatkan untuk kepentingan bersama. Ya. Nah, saya mencoba untuk tidak hanya di level teori gitu kan, bicara aja, tapi mempraktekannya. Makanya saya juga bekerja dengan komunitas-komunitas.
Contohnya kalau tidak salah kan bukan saja di Indonesia, tapi di luar negeri, termasuk di Tibet yang Yani sudah 12 tahun ya bekerja sama dengan komunitas Tibet, dengan lingkungan. Ini mungkin bisa cerita sedikit, karena kan biasanya kalau seniman dia sibuk dengan karyanya, ada aspek individunya lah di situ, berkutat dengan kanvasnya.
Memang ada juga yang seperti itu.
Tapi kalau Yani saya lihat kan ada agak berbeda. Jadi mungkin bisa ceritakan sendiri filosofi di balik karya seorang Yani.
Jadi ya itu, ketika saya bertanya pada diri saya, apa sih maksud dan tujuan hidup di bumi ini? Melakukan tindakan nyata, aksi nyata untuk melindungi, melestarikan alam. Ya. Lalu juga ketika saya melihat bahwa ada kelompok-kelompok atau makhluk-makhluk yang dianiaya gitu kan. Nah, ini kan bagian dari alam yang dirusak dan nanti akibatnya akan merusak seluruhnya. Berarti kita harus melindungi juga supaya tidak hancur semua. Nah, itulah awalnya. Maka terus saya mulailah bekerja dengan komunitas. Mula-mula di Jogja dengan komunitas pesantren paling tua, keturunan pesantren paling tua, namanya pesantren Amu Marta, pimpinan Kiai Jawis Masuri. Kami masih bekerja sampai sekarang. Karena,
apa yang dilakukan?
Nah itu, fokus di masalah lingkungan hidup, karena saya melihat ini memang masalah yang urgent, yang mendesak, dan harus segera ditangani kalau kita mau anak cucu nanti selamat, ya kan? Nah, kebetulan Pak Kiai juga setuju. Walaupun memang nanti ketika langkah apa pertama yang akan diambil, itu ya kita harus mendiskusikannya dan mendengarkan suara komunal juga kan, tidak bisa hanya memutuskan sendiri gitu. Jadi misalkan kalau kasus Jogja ya kita mulai membuat batik dengan pewarna alami. Kenapa? Padahal aku waktu itu usul, Pak, teman-teman tani organik yuk, gitu kan, tanam pohon yuk. Tapi mereka bilang, aduh susah jualnya, pasarnya sulit, karena waktu itu belum populer lah, belum ada. Ya udah batik dulu, ya oke batik dulu gitu. Nah, itu
jadi ada semacam empowermentnya juga ya.
Empowerment dan juga memang ada interaksi, maksudnya betul-betul mendiskusikan dan memutuskan bersama-sama.
Dan ada terasa dampaknya sampai sekarang.
Betul.
Hasil karyanya.
Jadi semua anggota merasa menjadi bagian kan. Kalau hanya pemimpinnya saja yang memutuskan, nah ini yang aku sebut sebagai strategi bottom up.
Iya, harus bottom up, harus dari akar rumput itu sendiri. Supaya ada sense of belongingnya.
Betul, dan mereka juga akhirnya merasa proud ya, gitu kan, nggak merasa wah nggak ini cuma proyek, ya udah kalau udah proyek selesai, nggak gitu. Dan itu yang saya coba terapkan dengan pendekatan bagaimana ya kita bisa mandiri gitu dan membangun sistem dulu. Jadi bukan ayo cari funding nanti ikutin deh sistem itu, biasanya jadi proyek selesai ya sudah selesai. Lalu juga tadi hubungan dengan alam misalkan, itu juga jadi nggak dipahami. Padahal dalam tradisi budaya kita hubungan dengan alam itu ya itu sangat erat, sangat penting kan, kita menjadi bagian dari alam.
Nah, ini juga diteruskan di tempat lain, contohnya di Tibet. Nah,
di
ini
Tibet.
saya ingin tahu ini, kok bisa, apalagi ini kan cukup menantang ya, areanya di bawah kuasaan China, dan biasanya mereka dengan pendatang luar atau orang luar kan langsung
sangat menantang. Nah, kalau untuk
curiga biasanya
hubungannya dengan Cina itu memang kebetulan saya sebelum nyasar ke Tibet itu, saya pernah mengajar di Akademi Seni di Guangzhou selama 2 tahun. Dan ini pun apa yang saya ajarkan di sana itu juga sesuatu yang khusus untuk konteks Cina. Karena waktu itu teman saya yang menjadi dosen di sana mengundang saya tanya, kenapa sih ngundang aku? Ya kita pingin kamu mengajarkan pendekatan kritis. Loh kenapa nggak kalian aja? Nggak mungkin katanya. Kalau kita yang melakukan
langsung penolakan, masih resistensi.
Ya gitu
mereka.
kan.
Iya.
Nah tapi kalau kamu orang asing loh, nanti kalau saya misalkan juga nggak
Mata-matai,
disukai, dianggap ini, enggak katanya kalau kamu sih paling nanti dideportasi gitu katanya. Tapi menarik nih, ya kan? Ya itulah aku kerjakan di sana.
Iya.
Jadi memang waktu aku ke Tibet itu sudah agak paham lah bagaimana situasi di Cinanya kan. Jadi dengan secara naluriah itu kayaknya udah cukup mengerti ini gimana nih menghadapinya gitu loh. Nah tapi kebetulan memang Tibet Plateau itu adalah wilayah yang sangat penting dalam konteks lingkungan hidup kan. Kenapa? Karena disebut tower air Asia. Semua sungai besar mata airnya di sana. Selain itu dikenal sebagai kutub ketiga sesudah kutub utara, kutub selatan. Nah ini salah satu bidang es terluas di muka bumi. Nah sekarang dengan perubahan iklim, pemanasan global, meleleh dengan cepat menimbulkan malapetaka di seluruh benua Asia, banjir, longsor, ribuan jadi korban setiap tahunnya. Nah jadi saya waktu mulai kerja di sana saya mengungkapkan alasan ini bahkan kepada pemerintah Cina. Dan karena secara politik untuk mereka juga tidak mudah untuk bekerja di sana. Selain memang ketinggian itu disebut atap dunia itu ya.
Tipis itu oksigennya.
Oksigen tipis, kalau badan kita nggak sehat nggak mungkin bisa kerja di sana. Anyway, jadi saya akhirnya diperbolehkan walaupun dengan syarat tidak boleh menerima bantuan dari luar.
Ya,
hanya
harus dari
potensi lokal.
Dari lokal. Dan ini sudah dikerjakan berapa lama sekarang?
Sekarang ya 12 tahun, walaupun 3 tahun terakhir saya nggak bisa ke sana karena COVID, tapi kita tetap berkontak.
Tapi perubahan yang terasa apa yang bisa dilihat? Apakah semakin bersih lingkungannya?
Banyak,
semakin hijau?
karena kita proyeknya itu ya dari mulai daur ulang sampah, ya, lalu menanam pohon, menghidupkan kembali tani organik, menghidupkan kembali kehidupan nomad itu, ternak itu, lalu mengelola sumber air karena di sana kan sumber air, dan menciptakan energi alternatif. 5 tahun pertama itu sudah ada 16 desa bergabung, ya, dan ini berita sangat bagus. Pemerintah Cina mengatakan kami setuju dan mendukung. Tidak ada pertanyaan apa.
Ini luar biasa.
Karena mereka lihat langsung buktinya.
Sekarang
kan.
ada berapa jumlah desa yang
kalau sekarang sudah di seluruh Tibet. Ada poin satu penting yang hubungannya juga dengan penyelamatan lingkungan hidup. Itu ada satu hal lagi yang membuat saya merasa berterima kasih sekali. Ternyata tradisi budaya di biara itu datangnya dari mana? Dari negeri kita. Itu di sana masih dilestarikan, bahkan masih dipraktekkan. Jadi saya mendapat kesempatan luar biasa untuk mempelajarinya kembali. Karena waktu itu saya sendiri nggak paham kalau itu di Tibet itu tradisinya datang dari negeri kita kan. Sesudah itu kaget, tapi terus aduh beruntung sekali aku mau belajar. Saya pergi ke India belajar di Biara Seraje. Karena di sana ya sudah biasa dengan menggunakan bahasa Inggris gitu kan. Kalau di Tibet ya harus
agak susah, harus pakai penerjemah terus.
Kan repot. Tapi juga karena diperkenalkan untuk memahami sistemnya. Katanya ini kamu harus ikut sistem lineage kita supaya kamu paham ini juga bagaimana dioperasikan gitu kan, bukan hanya teori toh. Begitu juga ketika saya diberi kesempatan mempraktekkan kerja-kerja dengan lingkungan itu, dengan komunitas, baik dari biara maupun dari orang biasa, itu juga merupakan bagian dari praktek ajarannya yang aku harus pahami gitu kan. Tidak hanya dari sisi perspektif modern saintifik aja, tapi juga dari perspektif budaya warisan leluhur kita sebetulnya, ya kan? Nah itu penting sekali karena nilai-nilai budaya warisan leluhur kita itu sangat beradab, sangat manusiawi, karena sangat menghargai keberagaman, juga akhirnya sifatnya merangkul semua. Gitu. Ini kan penting sekali, prinsip Bhinneka Tunggal Ika itu betul-betul dulu sebetulnya sudah ada, sudah hidup dan dipraktekkan. Kenapa saya mengatakan dipraktekkan? Kadang-kadang ada yang bilang, itu kan cuma teori. Tidak, saya melihat langsung di Tibet bagaimana mereka mempraktekkan itu.
Dan interconnectedness ini saya lihat kan ada, Yani yang kita berasal dari Indonesia, dan, berkarya di Jogja, kemudian Tibet ke India, ini kan semua kan sebenarnya sejarah kita juga tergabung. Tapi terakhir dengan perspektif senimannya sekarang, mungkin bisa bagaimana menyatukan ya semua filosofi dan juga ke semacam aktivisme ini, kepedulian terhadap planet bumi dan sesama dengan wujud dari karya-karya yang selama ini Yani kreasikan ya.
Betul.
Yani
memang
ada ininya.
Ya, saya mencoba untuk mengungkapkan kan, mengekspresikan apa yang menjadi ide-ide di balik semua ini yang tadi saya coba jelaskan. Memang ini awalnya tidak mudah, bahkan disalahpahami gitu. Lalu juga tadi hubungan dengan alam misalkan, itu juga jadi nggak dipahami. Padahal dalam tradisi budaya kita hubungan dengan alam itu ya itu
sangat erat.
Sangat erat, sangat penting kan, kita menjadi bagian dari alam. Nah, semua ini saya coba ekspresikan di dalam karya. Ya awalnya memang bahkan di dunia internasional pun itu ada komentarnya, is it art gitu.
Or is it political statement? Is
kan?
it propaganda atau tapi ini kan, tapi harusnya ya bisa semuanya kan.
Betul. Nah, tapi nanti dalam proses ini kan saya bertemu dengan teman-teman baik di Indonesia ataupun di luar Indonesia yang pemikir, kebanyakan filsuf, saintis gitu, selain seniman juga tentunya. Mereka ya ini yang kita coba yang disebut pendekatan interdisiplin atau di
Jadi
Jerman.
di situ ada semua, ada karya, ada filosofi, ada budaya, sejarah, lingkungan hidup, sains.
Nah, kalau di Jerman istilahnya transdisiplin, dan itu juga sebab kenapa sampai Universitas Passau mengundang saya mengajar di sana sejak 2012 sampai sekarang. Itu karena mereka tertarik dengan pendekatan seperti ini dan tidak hanya sebatas teori, bagaimana menerapkannya di dalam kenyataan. Dan itu yang mereka hargai dari apa yang saya kerjakan lewat karya seni itu, lewat aksi-aksi nyata dengan komunitas. Nah itu, jadi memang mungkin tidak simple.
Ya, bukan hanya karya seninya dan kita menikmati karya seninya, tapi ternyata ada satu integrasi dari berbagai macam hal.
Betul.
Ya, mungkin menurut Yani dengan adanya pameran ini kira-kira pesannya akan sampai nggak ke dunia internasional?
Saya sangat berharap, tapi sebetulnya kalau di tataran dunia seni internasional, saya sebetulnya sudah lebih beraksi banyak di sana.
Ini mungkin salah satu dari...
Justru saya sekarang ingin juga lebih fokus dengan di Indonesia, menyelamatkan negeri kita, gitu.
Ini luar biasa pentingnya ya.
Penting sekali.
Karena justru ya di negara kita lah masih banyak hal-hal yang masih harus diperbaiki.
Betul.
Bukan saja dari aspek lingkungan hidupnya, tapi dari aspek sosial budayanya.
Sosial
dan juga,
budayanya, budaya yang banyak.
Dan pemahaman terhadap
terlupakan.
jati diri.
Nah, pemahaman tentang identitas diri juga ini kan masih bermasalah. Ya kan?
Ya, ini kelihatannya kita masih perlu sambung lagi nih suatu hari, tapi kan
Ya.
nanti juga akan ada pameran tunggal yang akan
Ya,
yang digelar di Bali masih ya.
Di
mungkin.
Tony Raka Gallery.
Iya.
Mudah-mudahan pembukaan awal tanggal 26 November. Lalu nanti ada tahap di sana karena ingin menunjukkan prosesnya.
Baik, Yani, terima kasih banyak.
Sama-sama, terima kasih
Insight-nya
juga.
dan luar biasa karena Yani ini merupakan seniman yang multidimensional ya. Yang betul-betul di sini ada aspek wujud karya seninya, tapi di balik itu juga ada filosofinya, tapi ada juga spiritualitasnya.
Ya.
Dan di situ juga ya semoga bisa menjawab tadi pertanyaan fundamentalnya. Buat apa saya ada di bumi?
Betul.
Buat apa saya hidup ini? Dan sekali lagi terima kasih
Sama-sama.
banyak Yani, dan
Makasih
demikian
ya.
Insight with Desi Anwar kali ini, dan Anda juga dapat menyaksikan acara ini di cnnindonesia.com dan di YouTube CNN Indonesia. Insight with Desi Anwar. Sampai jumpa, stay safe. Bye bye.